We record?
Yeah.
All right. Everybody have a handout? Got a couple? Thanks. And we also have flyers for the next presentation next week on the back table, as well as my business cards. If you have any questions, feel free to give me an email or call after the presentation if you like. So, maintain, don't gain is the theme for our presentation series, and we're also in this fourth quarter doing a little challenge if you're in the Health Quest program. Has anybody ever heard the term maintain, don't gain before for the holidays? Yeah, it's kind of a common one, and the idea is to do just that, is to maintain your current weight and not put on the 7 to 8 holiday pounds that tends to happen. So hopefully I'm catching you in time. You know, hopefully that Thanksgiving didn't already get your 8 pounds. I'm just kidding. So.
Lord.
No joke. It was all muscle, right? So and we're going to talk about what I call how to be a star. And STAR just stands for, well, I'll show you here in a second, 4 main wellness categories that we're going to focus on. So we'll talk about what a star actually is. Oh, and maybe I won't stand right in front of the screen. That'd be great. So stretching basics, nutrition basics, cardio basics, and strength basics. So this is a 2-part series. I'm just going to talk about the basic benefits of these areas, and then I would get more advanced. So for those of you that are already doing some of these things, I think the next presentation will be a little bit more new stuff for you. So becoming a STAR just stands for stretching, treats, aerobic training, and resistance training. So we're putting forth effort in those 4 key wellness categories. And then that's just a fun little cartoon. I think everybody knows at the beginning of the year the gym's a little bit crazy, and then everybody kind of falls apart and it's less busy. So that's something I want you to think about too, is as the new year comes around, if we put some good strategies in place now, we can carry those over into the new year and hopefully carry forward. Realistically, I've been in training and wellness for, gosh, almost 12 years now. And I know asking somebody that isn't doing any of these to do all 4 of them at once probably isn't likely. So think about how good you do already with your stretching and flexibility, how good you already do with your nutrition, cardio, and strength training. Think if there's any areas amongst those 4 that you can build on. Maybe just add one of these. So think about how good you are in those and add your own to it. So I'm going to give you some strategies to build in all 4, but if you want to just focus on a couple, knowing yourself, that might be smart. So first we're going to talk about stretching and flexibility, and today just some benefits of those and some examples. So stretching and flexibility. Stretching, if you didn't know, is basically just purposefully elongating a muscle group or a group of muscles. So if I did a straight arm on the wall like this, I'd be stretching out my chest, my shoulder, my bicep, my forearm. So I'm stretching most of those major muscle groups that are in the upper body by elongating. Why would I do that? I do it to prevent injury, improve flexibility, increase my muscle control, speed up recovery, increase circulation, amongst many other reasons. And flexibility is the ability to move your joints and muscles through a full range of motion. So my hamstring, what's my hamstring flexibility like? Well, one way I could see is by bending over and trying to touch my toes. The speed at which I do that, though, is also important. Let's say I'm a kickboxer and I'm trying to do a kick. If I'm flexible to be able to touch my toes, that's one thing. But how flexible am I through motion? That's another thing. And we'll talk more about dynamic style stretching in the next presentation. But speed of motion, especially if you're an athlete, how many people in here are athletes? I disagree. Every single one of you is an athlete. How many, not to be gross, but how many people get up and down from the toilet every day? Okay, yes. That's an athletic move. That's called a squat, right? And it really is. So we'll talk more about this in strength training. I'll get off on a tangent, but we all are in 3 dimensions, right? We all move in 3D. So doing a squat, getting up and down off the toilet is an athletic move. But we would want to avoid things that are not 3D, especially if we're training to be an athlete, which we all are. We all have to function, is basically what I'm getting at. We all move around and function in 3D. So sitting down at a leg extension machine, for example, and I'm sure we've all done these before, just doing a leg extension to develop the quadricep muscles isn't very functional. but doing a squat, doing a lunge, doing a deadlift, those are functional exercises. So basic stretching, always warm up first. Okay, Paul, so I just do 10 real quick jumping jacks and that's my warm up, right? Not really. We want to warm up until you break a light sweat. So maybe 5 minutes on the treadmill, maybe a dynamic warm up, maybe jogging around the block a couple times. Those would be examples. Because stretching a cold muscle increases your risk for injury. Think of your muscles as like a rubber band. If you take a rubber band out of a freezer and stretch it, more likely to tear, right? But if it's warmed up, it's much more pliable. So warm up is actually really important. You want to hold it for 15 to 30 seconds. You ever done one of these? 10 quick jumping jacks? Woo! All right, I'm stretched out and warmed up, and here we go. That's not really, yes, he's head shaking. That's not really a warm up. You want to hold your stretches for 15 or 30 seconds. So if you're doing, for example, I showed you earlier, a straight arm on the wall to stretch out your chest and shoulders, you want to hold that for 15 or 30 seconds. You also want to continue to breathe. I've caught myself doing this a lot of times, especially in yoga, where holding a stretch, you tend to hold your breath too. You want to take deep breaths. Concentrate on where you're trying to stretch. Deep breaths, especially in through the nose and out through the mouth. They should be pain-free. So if you're doing a quad pullback, for example, and you're getting shooting pains through your muscles or through your knee, that's not pain-free. So it should feel good. You should feel a nice light stretch. You should feel a warming sensation in your target area. And like I said earlier, concentrate on what you're trying to do. Don't think about 20 other things. Actually think about what you're trying to do. Let me give you an example. If you wouldn't mind standing up for me. So let's try, if you want. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but let's try a quad pullback. So just grab your foot if you're able to. If you're not, it's okay, and you can use your chair or table for balance. So you may or may not feel a little bit of a stretch in your leg, but I want you to concentrate now. I want you to flex your abdomen, flex your glutes, your butt muscles, and think about bringing your knee right under your hip. You feel the difference? See how when you engage those counter muscles, your abdomen and your glutes, that creates that stretch in the quadricep. So that's what I mean by concentration. Now we're actually engaging those opposing muscles and creating a stretch on the quadricep. Kind of cool, huh? Oh, I'm sorry, stay standing if you don't mind. Sorry. This is interactive, right? So I wanted to show you, and again, this is totally up to you. If you don't feel like doing these or if they hurt, please don't. First one is an arm cross. These are just real basic stretches, and most of them you can do sitting right at your desk. So you can hop up in your cubicle or even just real quick do some of these while you're at your desk. So the first one here is an arm cross. So just grab right behind your elbow, arm straight out in front of the body and bring it straight across. Good. And if you want extra leverage, I like to actually bring my forearm of my other hand right in front of that, and you can create a little bit more leverage. So that stretches the rear deltoid and side deltoid group in the shoulder. And same on the other side. Probably seen it before. Basic stretches, but very, very good stretches that you can do, like I said, even just sitting at your desk. Next one, elbow pull back, and you'll see with different trainers and different physical therapists that we have 1,000 names for one thing. So you might see the same thing under a different name, and that's fine. Elbow pull back, you would just put one hand in the middle of your back right here in between your shoulder blades, and the opposing hand over the head and straight back. I'm sure you've seen it, yep. And again, we're going to focus on what we're trying to stretch. This is the tricep muscle group here. So try keeping your shoulder in position, and then as you can, just gently pull straight back on that elbow. And switch when you're ready. So the other hand goes in between the shoulder blades. Everybody feel that in the triceps? Also right there. Okay. So I wrote down seated toe reach. I wrote that down because, again, I think it's good to have some basic stretches that you can do at your desk. Before we do that, I'll show you standing. So let's just cross our arms. Make sure you have enough room to bend over. Cross your arms in front of your chest. Feet about hip width apart. And then you don't have to touch your elbows to your toes, but you're just thinking about that. So if touching your elbows to your toes is right here, that's great. Just a little bit of bend in the knees. And don't forget to breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. And that you should feel through the back of the legs and the hamstrings, and through the hips and lower back too. Come back up. Figure 4. Grab something to balance on, unless you're really good on one leg. Oh, let me show you that real quick too. If you're in your chair, you can also do the same stretch. Just scoot to the edge of your chair. One leg out in front, one leg at 90 degrees, and you can just reach for your toe like that and stretch out the hamstrings too. So it's an alternative. Figure 4, if you have something to balance on. Let's cross our right leg in front of the left over the knee, and then just squat down. And you can use your chair for balance or the wall. And this is going to stretch the piriformis, hips, and glute muscles. Everybody feel it through the hips? And if you want more stretch, you can just squat down deeper. I'd go lower, but my slacks would tear. It'd be embarrassing. Same on the other side. Everybody feeling that in the hips and glutes? We alive out there?
Yeah.
All right. This is one of my favorite ones. Men especially, we tend to get really, really tight in the hips and glutes, so guys especially, this is a good one. Straight arm on wall. I know we have a limited wall space, so I'm actually going to show you that, and then if you want to try, you sure can. So your arm is going to be level with your chest, and you're just going to rotate against your body in the opposite direction. And you should feel that in the chest and shoulder. A modification for it, if you don't have a wall, you can put both hands in your lower back and then just try to touch your elbows together behind your back. And that stretches out the chest and shoulders too. So just some simple, easy stretches you can do. Like I said, all right there at your desk if you get tight and at home as well. And then the last one is for the soleus. Soleus is this big muscle group. The gastrocnemius is the big part of the calf. And then right below that is this big muscle group called the soleus. So for that, if you just put one foot in front of the other, straight line if you can, and then just bend your knees slightly in a mini squat, you'll feel in that back foot a slight stretch in the soleus. Sorry, Julie, I'm going all over the place, aren't I? Driving you crazy. We are recording this today, so if you want to watch it later. If I'm ever out of camera, it's my own fault for bouncing around too much. So I'll teach you one thing today. If you want a quick anatomy lesson, I had in dissection lab, we had a really good lab at KU. We had actual live cadavers. And everybody's heard of the Achilles tendon, right? Well, I had a professor that said if you write down Achilles tendon on one of your tests with your cadaver lab, then you failed the class. It's actually called the tendocalcaneus, and the reason I mention that is it's right by the soleus, the tendocalcaneus. We learned that today at least, right? All right.